edge of the Nile Delta,
The whole complex, it's huge.
a major archaeological dig has begun.
We found the skull.
This is the search for the real historic Cleopatra, the leader, the politician, the scholar.
And it's attempting to shed more light on Queen Cleopatra and her dynasty, the Ptolemies.
She has been thoroughly demonized by the ancient sources and heavily mythologized for this brand of demonic sexuality.
Now, hard graft and painstaking archaeology are unearthing new discoveries that transport us back to the time of the Ptolemies and Cleopatra.
Oh my God, there are two mummies.
The Ptolemies, the last dynasty of the ancient Egyptians, are fascinating to Egyptologists like me. They were the last in a line of pharaonic dynasties that governed here for over 3,000 years. They came to power in 305 BC and ruled for almost 3 centuries. A ruthless, power-hungry family, saturated with scandal, sibling marriages, infighting, and murder, ending in the most famous of them all, Queen Cleopatra.
Now, the best place to look for pharaohs is in their tombs, where they lie with all of the things that they owned in life. That's how we can find out about them. However, Cleopatra's tomb has never been found.
In fact, not a single pharaoh's tomb has been found in Egypt from the time of the Ptolemies, and there is little archaeological evidence from that period.
Here on the edge of the Nile Delta, on the Mediterranean coast, one of the largest excavations is underway to search for Cleopatra. And it's being led by Dr Kathleen Martinez.
Archaeologists have traditionally searched for Cleopatra closer to the centre of Alexandria, where she was born and ruled. Their only clue to her potential whereabouts appears in ancient texts, including those written by Strabo from 7 BC. They say that she spent her last days hidden away in her mausoleum or funerary temple, but crucially, they don't say where this was. Dr Kathleen Martinez decided to take a fresh approach. She began hunting for a temple complex that might be connected to Cleopatra, close to, but outside of, Alexandria.
I make this map and I started putting together all the ancient temples. And the one who really captured my eye was this one, because nobody had much information about this temple. They call it Taposiris Magna.
When Dr Martinez first arrived, not much was known about Taposiris Magna. It was known that it was in use during the Greco-Roman era, a period that spans from 332 BC to 395 AD, which covers the time when the Ptolemies ruled Egypt. For 14 years, Dr Martinez has been slowly excavating the temple complex for clues. With only 8 weeks permission granted to dig each year, she has a limited time window. Now it's the first week of the new season, and I've come to see her progress.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Great.
I'm Glenn. Nice to meet you.
Nice
I'm
meeting
really
you.
looking forward to learning more about Taposiris Magna.
You came in a great moment.
Lots happening.
Yes.
Fantastic. So you've been working here since 2005?
Yes.
Right.
When I came to the side, that was the level of the floor. You
So
see?
just,
The-
oh right, so this is, okay,
Yes.
so you've removed a lot.
So yes, I remove all of that and then uncover all the structures that were part of this religious complex.
One of the discoveries they made was of a statue of a pharaoh wearing a kilt known as a shendit. A carved inscription found nearby suggested the statue was King Ptolemy IV, Cleopatra's 3 times great-grandfather. It was the first major discovery for Kathleen's team, and it linked the temple directly to the Ptolemaic dynasty. But it didn't give Kathleen a direct connection to Cleopatra. she began investigating another lead. Cleopatra, like pharaohs before her, represented a living god to her people. And for Cleopatra, that god was Isis.
One of the things that I tried to understand, her role as the human incarnation of Isis. This is a role that very few scholars dedicated some time to study.
To the Ptolemies, Isis was the universal mother goddess, similar to Mother Nature and the Virgin Mary.
Isis is a really important goddess from Egypt, but her cult is starting to spread outside Egypt, and it seems to be a cult that people can really understand and empathise with.
So this was already known to be a temple dedicated in part to Isis, is that right?
Not really, because it was not evidence. It was not archaeological evidence. And inside this temple that was excavated before by previous missions, I was lucky to discover the foundation plates.
Foundation plates were used to dedicate a temple to a particular god and outline the area on which the temple would be built. Carved into these foundation plates in Greek and Egyptian hieroglyphs, Kathleen and her team found something extraordinary. The inscriptions state this is a temple dedicated to Isis, built by Ptolemy IV Cleopatra, whose statue they had already found. And that's not all they discovered.
This is the offering table.
Oh, the altar, yeah.
We discovered 200 coins.
Wow, okay.
This altar is where the priests would make offerings to the gods in the name of the pharaoh. And these coins might hold a clue to any other pharaohs linked to the temple. But they've been corroded over the centuries. After weeks of painstaking work, Kathleen's team finally managed to clean away the corrosion to reveal an image and a name. On one side of the coin in Greek was the name Queen Cleopatra, and on the other, her face. It was a major breakthrough and an incredible archaeological find, not only linking Cleopatra directly to Taposiris Magna, but also revealing a striking image of the Queen.
If we look at these, we can see that she's got quite a prominent nose. She's got probably what we'd call a double chin, to be honest. She's not necessarily what we'd call a classical beauty.
By using these coins as a blueprint, 3D artists have expertly recreated how Cleopatra chose to represent herself to her people as she ruled Egypt 2,000 years ago.
She wears what's known as a diadem, a strip of cloth. And this is the symbol of royalty for Hellenistic kings. She was sending the message that she was as good as and as valid a ruler as any of the men who had gone before her.
These coins would have been pressed using Cleopatra's direct instructions. This is how she wanted to be seen. Having finally found the proof this temple was in use during Cleopatra's reign, Kathleen believes she will find her tomb here, a discovery that would stun the archaeological world. But first, I want to understand why Cleopatra remains such a mystery to this day, and the answer lies just 30 miles away in Alexandria.
We're here in Alexandria, on the shores of the Mediterranean. This is where Cleopatra was born and raised.
Today, Alexandria is the biggest city on the Mediterranean. In Cleopatra's time, it was the biggest in the world. Famous across the ancient world as a centre of learning, culture, and wealth. The natural harbour was divided by a causeway, leading to the famous lighthouse of Pharos, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Built by Ptolemy I Soter between 300 and 280 BC, the lighthouse was essential for trading ships. And at the heart of the ancient city was the Great Library. It stood close to where the modern library stands today. The ancient library at Alexandria was built by Cleopatra's forefathers. It was made with the express purpose of gathering knowledge from across the ancient world so that they could contribute to this monumental centre of learning. And it's this that Cleopatra was born into. As a Ptolemaic princess, she would have had access to the library.
She was well educated, and the classical authors tell us this. They were particularly impressed by her command of languages. I think this was all done to make sure that she was able to rule.
Although information about Cleopatra is scarce, some recent discoveries of forgotten and unpublished Arabic texts are shining new light on the Queen. Dr Akasha El-Dali is an Egyptologist at University College London.
When I was a student at Cairo University, it used to make me wonder, why are we studying all the time great eminent professors in the West?
So Dr El-Dali decided to go in search of Arabic texts.
To my surprise, there were hundreds of manuscripts which have never either been published or studied properly.
The manuscripts he discovered were written in the Middle Ages by Arabic historians, but they were compiled from much older sources.
Lots of materials of interest to an Egyptologist is to be found in medieval Arabic records, but they have since long disappeared. I found a lot of descriptions of tombs that have since long gone, temples, all sorts of materials. The only descriptions of these materials is in medieval Arabic text. So it was terribly exciting.
These medieval historians collected information from oral testimonies, Egyptian hieroglyphs, scrolls and maps now lost to modern scholars. The texts fill a gap in Western writings about ancient Egypt.
So in our own Egyptology resources, we talk about Greek-Roman materials, we talk about later materials, then we have 1,000 years gap in our knowledge. It's completely neglected, and my aim was simply to use materials from medieval Arabic scholarly works that covers this 1,000 years only to fill that gap.
They chronicle a very different Cleopatra to the beautiful seductress more commonly known today.
This is one of the most remarkable sources for the story of Cleopatra. It's a 10th century historian called Al-Masaudi, who came from Iraq and traveled to Egypt.
She was a sage, a philosopher who elevated the ranks of the scholars and enjoyed their company. She also wrote books on medicine, germs and cosmetics, in addition to many other books ascribed to her.
You could feel a sense of deeper appreciation for the woman, not just a monarch. She had within her everything you dream of in a ruler. Great intellectual abilities, great political ambitions, great understanding of the abilities of her own nation.
The Cleopatra that is resurrected from the Arabic texts is a brilliant, strategic, well-educated and cunning queen. But today in the West, she is remembered as a great beauty and seducer of men for her affairs with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Surely texts housed at the ancient library of Alexandria could have revealed more about the true nature of the Egyptian queen. Sadly not. The ancient library at Alexandria was devastated by fire. This is a copy of the only surviving manuscript thought to have been made using the books housed in the library at Alexandria. Thousands and thousands and thousands of scrolls completely gone, and with them, vital knowledge about Cleopatra's time. That's the reason that we know so little about the real Cleopatra. Then, in 365 AD, a tsunami decimates Alexandria, and with it, Cleopatra's royal palace. Less than 400 years after her death, evidence of the last of the pharaohs slipped under the waves and disappeared from the historic record. Many Egyptologists believe Cleopatra's final resting place lies there too. But despite countless expeditions, divers have found no trace of her tomb. Archaeology is like putting together a four-dimensional jigsaw puzzle, with the pieces scattered across time and no one knows what the picture on the box looks like. Clues to Cleopatra's life or the location of her tomb may no longer reside in Alexandria. Dr. Kathleen Martinez is certain they lie at Taposiris Magna.
This is a huge site, absolutely enormous, and there's a lot going on here. So in the distance there you can see the temple of Taposiris Magna, and then further around here we can see the lighthouse looking structure that marks another necropolis.
By using ground penetrating radar, Kathleen and her team have discovered and excavated 16 catacombs over the past 14 years.
I'm halfway between Taposiris Magna Temple, which is behind me, and the lighthouse-like structure, which is in front of me. I'm underground in this subterranean area, catacombs, which are a burial site for the Greco-Roman period.
Kathleen doesn't expect to find Cleopatra here. They're not grand enough for that. And anyway, most of these catacombs were looted hundreds of years ago. But she does want to learn more about the kind of people buried here in case they offer a further link to the Queen. All of the mummified remains they've found so far have been fragments.
That means it would be particularly lucky to be able to find one of these catacombs with a burial inside that's still intact. And actually on the last day of her excavations a year ago, that's exactly what Kathleen found. So what's the story of this tomb?
It has an incredible story. This is a moment I've been waiting for a year. This incredible catacomb has stairs going down to an offering table, and it has beneath 3 chambers. At the beginning we thought it were 2, but then the last day of the season we discover one over there. This is what I'm going to excavate. When I was leaving, I covered as much as I could.
So you secured it, and you've had a whole year of hoping that things were going to be ready for you to come back and excavate.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
An intact burial would be an incredible discovery because of the information mummies can hold within their wrappings. Traditionally, mummification involved removing the organs. The body would be covered in salt and left for a number of days to remove any moisture, then packed to retain its shape. Resin or plant oils mixed with perfume would then cover the body. Next, layers of linen strips were wrapped around the body, within which amulets or other tokens would be added for magical protection. Finally, a layer of linen or papyrus was applied with glue or plaster to form a hard cartonnage exterior, which could then be painted with motifs and adorned with gold leaf. However, by the time of the Ptolemies, it wasn't uncommon for less time to be spent on internal mummification in favour of external decoration. Last year, Kathleen excavated the 2 side chambers of this catacomb.
In this chamber, we discover a mummy of a woman, and she has an ibis mummified in her head. You know, ibis represent wisdom. Scribes in ancient Egyptian, they were the one who could be buried with ibis. That means that she knew how to write.
Okay.
Found in the right-hand chamber were the partial remains of a mummy buried with a mummified ibis bird. A wading bird with a slender downturned bill, the ibis was the symbol of the god of wisdom, Thoth. This could suggest the person buried here was an educated woman. This is rare. Only a few % of the population of ancient Egypt would have been educated. It gave Kathleen a clue that she was dealing with a catacomb of significant people in the top tiers of society. Now, after being forced to wait a whole year for the start of the new archaeological season, Kathleen is going to open the final of the 3 chambers.
So this one could bring us so much information. This is an intact one. I'm dying to open.
I'm going to let you get on with it.
Yeah. My fish.
Jump. Jump.
Okay. Yeah.
Sarah.
We have a big block and a second block. We need a chisel and a hammer. They're trying to remove one of the first blocks. We'll open the first hole here. We have to be careful because we cannot let the block go inside the tomb. Shwaya, shwaya. Oh, okay. It's open. Oh my God, there are two mummies.
Major excavations are underway at Taposiris Magna. Dr. Kathleen Martinez has opened a tomb with two intact mummies inside.
It's open. Oh my God, there are two mummies.
No one has set eyes on these mummies for over 2,000 years. But they have to fully open the tomb before I can get a proper look. Each limestone slab blocking the entrance weighs close to 80 pounds. One wrong move and the fragile mummies could be destroyed.
Okay.
Hi Kathleen, you down there?
And you have to come down and see this wonder.
Wow. So you've removed the doorway, the blocking, and now we can see clearly what's inside. So what do you make of it?
What we think about the mummies right now is the mummification. It's from the late period, which means the time of Queen Cleopatra.
I suppose at this period in the Greco-Roman time, this is what you expect to find, isn't it? So you're not looking for decorated tombs and lots of objects in the tombs, but everything is really condensed onto the mummy itself. So any evidence is going to be within those wrappings.
Exactly.
This simple burial chamber is unlike the tombs of pharaohs, such as Tutankhamun, who was buried 1,300 years before Cleopatra. It was custom then for royalty to be buried with their possessions. We don't know if Ptolemaic pharaohs followed these traditions because we've never discovered one of their tombs.
It looks like there was a lot of gold.
Yes.
Certainly gold leaf, certainly on the one on the right possibly.
Exactly.
And some on the other one as
You
well.
can see, yes, you can see.
And that must be like a cartonnage covering,
Yes.
right? So linen or papyrus or whatever they've used. That might help you to date these as well, actually.
Although now covered in dust from 2,000 years underground, at the time these mummies would have been spectacular. To be covered in gold leaf shows they weren't just anyone. They would have been wealthy, important members of society. On first look, the mummy on the right, mummy number 1, looks to be complete, while the mummy on the left, number 2, has not been so lucky.
Why do you think the mummy on the left here is in such a poor state of preservation compared to the mummy on the right?
In the back of this tomb, you can see there is a hole coming from the surface.
So over years and years and years, water's been entering through from the surface.
Exactly.
Right, and being soaked up by this mummy, which has preserved this mummy a little better.
Exactly.
Right.
It's phenomenal what she's found down there. The state of preservation isn't great, particularly of one of them. However, now the challenges begin for Kathleen. There's a lot of work to be done now, not least in terms of working out how to secure these mummies, how to remove them safely so that they can be studied further. We need to know who they are, how they relate to each other, how they relate to others in the necropolis. And Kathleen's quite convinced that these date to the time of Cleopatra. So that's a theory that needs to be tested as well.
To get any more information about these mummies, Kathleen needs to start by x-raying them. Unfortunately, the tomb is too small to get an x-ray machine in. So the mummies have to come out. They have to find a way to get them out undamaged. Leaving them in the tomb is not an option. They would have begun to deteriorate as soon as the chamber was opened and they were exposed to the elements.
I can be inside like I was me.
Egyptologist and bone specialist Dr Linda Chapon is called in to examine and help protect the mummies.
I'm trying to protect this area of mummy number 1 because with the passing of time, it's starting to crack.
Over the next few days, the team get to work, using glue and tissue paper to reinforce the cartonnage and prepare the mummies for removal from the tomb. Protecting the cartonnage is crucial. During the Ptolemaic period, it was common for old papyrus scrolls to be used in the wrappings, much like your fish and chips wrapped in old newspaper, which is why mummies can be an invaluable source of preserved manuscripts. The motifs painted on top could help identify the mummy and tell archaeologists more about their lives.
So the area of the skull was very weak. So we decided to fill it with cotton, mixed with a bit of glue so that the cotton was joined together. We hope that like that the cartonnage will not fall down.
Then, as the team are working on the remains, they see something fascinating.
We can see the scarab here.
On the less preserved mummy, number 2, they've spotted a stunning painting of a scarab. Ancient Egyptians believed they would be reborn after death. The scarab, painted in gold leaf, symbolises eternal life and rebirth, ensuring the mummy's future in the afterlife. Unfortunately, mummy number 2 is beyond saving in one piece. To protect the painting of the scarab, the team start to remove the cartonnage piece by piece for reconstruction later at the laboratory.
Don't just take the bandage, you have to cut. Like a surgery.
On both mummies, the cartonnage is covered in gold leaf. This would have been used to make these mummies look like gods and help them on their way to the afterlife, and suggests they were wealthy members of society.
This is the mummification material. Yeah.
With the cartonnage safely removed, Kathleen and Linda begin to examine the skeletal remains of mummy number 2.
The bones are very fragile. I think it's a man.
While the delicate and painstaking work on the mummies continues, Kathleen turns her focus to another part of the site. The team have begun to excavate around the lighthouse monument. Over 2,000 years old, it stands just 500 metres away from the altar where Cleopatra's coins were found. Although incorrectly positioned to be used as an actual lighthouse, it would have been seen for miles around. So what was its purpose? Kathleen has a theory.
Wow, this is incredible. This is huge.
It was built maximum the 2nd century BC. There were many theories about the lighthouse, but it has niches for 2 statues.
One on each side of the entrance.
Yes, and this is the statues that we discovered.
You discovered these?
Yes.
Definitely Greco-Roman.
Who could afford this?
It's a huge chamber, isn't it?
This is monumental.
So these niches are the burial niches where you'd expect the coffins to have been?
Because of the 2 statues that we discovered this season at the entrance, it's more like a temple.
Really? What's your focus now?
We want to confirm if it was a tomb, catacomb, or a funerary temple as we believe it was.
For thousands of years, pharaohs would build grand superstructures to mark their tombs, commemorate their lives, and provide ceremonial locations. Perhaps the most impressive of all is the funerary temple for Queen Hatshepsut at Deir el-Bahri. Built 3,500 years ago, it tells the story of her life in hieroglyphs. For Cleopatra, or any of the Ptolemaic pharaohs, no mausoleum or funerary monument has ever been found. Kathleen is hoping this could be such a monument. The lighthouse looks modest now, but she's found evidence indicating that it was a lot more spectacular in its day.
After excavating for several weeks, we have discovered pieces of marble, different kind of marble, which explain the grandeur of this tomb. And we have different type of marbles and granite, red granite from Aswan.
The quarries of Aswan were 700 miles away up the Nile. The red granite and marble were materials reserved for elites and for royalty who had the means to transport it.
And we have in different areas remains of the marble that cover this tomb that we believe is more than a tomb. Probably this is also a funerary temple tomb. It's incredible.
The team around the lighthouse are scraping together the evidence of this giant unknown jigsaw. They're even beginning to wonder if this could be a funerary monument for Queen Cleopatra herself. A team working right next to the lighthouse uncover a deep channel leading to an empty chamber. Here they discover a shaft that leads to a hidden tomb. Although the ancient looters have been there before them, they haven't taken everything. As they sift through the sand, clues begin to emerge. I'm joining Dr. Linda Chapon as she examines the human remains they found down here.
So maybe we will find other pieces of the skull and we can complete it. It will be great.
How much of the skull remains?
Well, we have missing the forehead, and this is the mastoides. That's just what we have behind the ear. This is the sutures of the skull. So when you are a baby or when you are a child, they are quite open.
Yeah.
And this one, it's almost close. So maybe it was 40, 45.
It looks like there's quite a lot of excavating still to do.
Exactly. So it seems it's
Still going down and could be more, yeah.
As they sift more bones out of the sand, it seems an entire family was buried here.
We have many human remains, and they were mummified. And there were also children. Yes, I already seen one of about 14.
So what's your suggestions for what's happening here? Family interment?
Oh, that's for sure. I think it was like a multiple burial.
The broader archaeological context suggests that this is fairly prestigious
No,
location.
it was very, very important, very important. And we find in this area many fragments of marble. It's a rich material, and fragments maybe of statues and nice amulets, and so it was a burial for rich people, for sure.
As the days pass and the excavations continue, Kathleen is finding that this lighthouse monument is surrounded by tombs of the richest members of society. Gold-leafed mummies, a highly educated woman, and a wealthy family tomb. But they're not the only people that are buried here. In the floor of the causeway leading to the lighthouse tomb, they've uncovered something I've never seen anything quite like before.
Things have moved on since yesterday.
Yeah, we are happy because we found a skeleton. It's quite well preserved for for the position where it's placed.
So carving the coffin out of the living rock almost like a sarcophagus
And,
in the floor level itself.
Yes, it's very interesting. What is the reason they chose this place?
It's really exciting.
Yeah.
Human remains possibly acting as guardians to a tomb seems unique.
The ground's made of limestone, and the Egyptians have carved mummy coffins into the limestone itself. They don't appear to be mummified, just skeletal remains there now, and there could be more to discover too. It's something that we don't seem to see anywhere else in Egypt. So the questions are, who are these people? How do they relate to the tomb owners? How do they relate to Taposiris Magna? And possibly, how might they relate to Cleopatra herself?
For Kathleen, her focus is on the lighthouse monument. She's looking for more evidence that this is part of a funerary temple. Aerial images clearly show how the limestone walls that once made up this grand structure in the shadow of the lighthouse monument have collapsed from earthquakes over the centuries. These collapsed walls are blocking the entrance to more unexplored chambers. Chambers that could contain vital clues. The team have only managed to remove one block from the side so far. However, Kathleen is already making remarkable discoveries.
This is what I found this morning. This is wonderful.
Oh wow. So
This is sword.
this literally came up this morning.
Yes.
So these are brand new finds and some kind of
Yes.
military equipment, a sword there, a sandal.
Until now, we haven't discovered any military equipment, so these are the first one we discovered.
This is a Roman's military kit and is the first found at Taposiris Magna. It's another crucial link to the Ptolemaic dynasty. The time of the Ptolemies was a melting point of history. The emerging Roman Empire was conquering Europe, and it was only a matter of time before Egypt was next. But Cleopatra didn't just have the Roman Empire to worry about. She had problems closer to home. In 48 BC, she is fighting for her throne with her younger brother. Caesar, fighting a civil war of his own, sails into Alexandria harbour wanting to secure Egypt and its resources for Rome.
At the time that Caesar and Cleopatra encountered each other in Alexandria, Caesar was 52 years old. Cleopatra herself was 21. She saw this as an opportunity to gain his support and to do so in a way that no Ptolemaic ruler had ever done before.
She's the Queen of Egypt. She can sleep with who she likes. A major part of her duty is to obtain an heir to the throne. She gets an heir, she gets a son. And this son really strengthens her right to rule Egypt.
Egypt becomes the breadbasket of Rome, and Caesar the iron fist behind Cleopatra's throne. Their people and fates now bound. At Taposiris Magna, the team have finished preparing the mummies for removal. One at a time, very carefully, the mummies are slowly starting to be removed from the tomb. This is a really delicate operation, real precision work down there. But once they are removed from the tomb, they can be further conserved, they can be analysed, they can be x-rayed, and hopefully Kathleen can start saying something about who these people were and when they died. It's the last week of excavations at Taposiris Magna. Dr Kathleen Martinez's team have finally managed to extract the intact mummy number 1 from the tomb.
This is a big moment, and I thought it wouldn't be possible for us to remove the mummy and protect the cartonnage.
What secrets might be hidden under the cartonnage? Kathleen hopes an X-ray might reveal more information.
This is the first intact mummy that we discovered at Taposiris Magna necropolis, and we need to know the type of mummification they used to do here, and we will know through the X-ray.
They are looking for any clues that might indicate the date of the mummies. If they can see unpreserved organs, that would suggest that the burial was from the Ptolemaic era or later, since they spent less time on the internal mummification process. X-rays can show internal tissues, bones and organs. Osteologist Dr Tahir carefully examines the scans.
What can you say about the mummification process?
Without remove anything on the body.
They didn't remove anything for the mummification.
I think that. I think.
Dr Tahir confirms that no organs were removed. Along with the catacomb-style burials and the temple context, this means these mummies are most likely from the Ptolemaic era.
Here we can see this area called sciatic notch. It's very wide. That means it's female.
Yes.
More than 18 because the third molar appear after 18.
It's amazing. Now we know the sex, and we've been discussing, and it's been confirmed by the osteologist and the radiologist.
A man and a woman buried together. Perhaps they could even be husband and wife.
And we can see also the placement of hand. We can see this spoon from the hand above her pelvis. They told us the mummy could be like this. So it's very amazing and very excited information.
Pharaohs are often buried with their arms across their chests, carrying the staff and flail. It seems this mummy was buried with its arms lowered across the pelvis, which the team believes in this necropolis is indicative of a woman of high status. If their suspicions are correct, then this was an educated, high-status woman in ancient Egypt. And at this time, in this place, it's likely that she worked at the temple of Taposiris Magna, perhaps even as a priestess at the temple. But that's not all the X-rays can tell us about her life.
Here we can see something strange and different. This is the fracture.
The fracture was before.
Before labor, yes.
This fracture shows signs of healing. It captures a moment of time some 2,000 years ago in the life of this woman. She was injured, but lived in a society and had a position within that society that afforded her time to recover. The X-ray is helping to uncover details of the woman that was buried here.
We had a great discoveries. I'm so sad that it's finished the season. We have to wait for next season, but in the meantime we'll be working with the reconstruction of the mummy and see how the cartonnage could be restored.
This delicate restoration of the cartonnage will have to take place in the safety of a laboratory. It's hoped that the intact mummy number 1 and the cartonnage they saved from mummy number 2 might reveal more about the Ptolemies and maybe even of Cleopatra herself.
The things that we must highlight are the cartonnage of the mummies is special. The location of the tomb, it's special.
The mummies were wrapped in gold leaf, a sign of wealth. They were most likely educated, and in Ptolemaic Egypt, priests were some of the only people that could read and write. If they were priests, then they were part of high society. It's possible that they interacted and met with Cleopatra.
In a purely Egyptian temple, you would find only the king being able to offer to the gods. Because Cleopatra is, as a ruler, the head of all the cults, she technically should be making all the offerings in all the temples throughout the land of Egypt, but she clearly can't do that. She appoints high priests.
Religion and the temples were the central organising factors of society in ancient Egypt, and priests played a key role in maintaining a pharaoh's power. It was in Cleopatra's best interest to keep them close and on side.
How much she goes into the temples and makes the offerings, we don't know. How much she even communicates with the priests of the cult, we don't know. It's not recorded for us at all, unfortunately.
Although other Egyptologists have their doubts, Kathleen believes that she's walking in the footsteps of Cleopatra. From years of excavations and this year's discoveries, we can now rebuild what Taposiris Magna would have looked like during the time of Cleopatra, when the Queen herself may have visited and met with priests and priestesses of the Temple of Isis. But there is more to this season than the discovery of these extraordinary mummies. Uncovering multiple burials of important people make the necropolis of Taposiris Magna a tantalising place.
With this information that we have now, it's a new evidence why these people wanted to be buried here.
Although she can't be sure, Kathleen believes the lighthouse could be a Ptolemaic funerary temple, the first ever discovered, overlooking a temple built by Cleopatra's family, dedicated to her goddess Isis, and still in use during her reign.
Kathleen's archaeological discoveries are helping her slowly to piece together this tremendously difficult jigsaw puzzle.
Archaeologists have suspected for years that Cleopatra's tomb was lost in the tsunami that decimated Alexandria. But Kathleen is questioning those assumptions with the evidence